it strikes me as difficult for veterans to accurately describe certain parts of their experiences, both who they were when they joined, right? The reasons for joining, who they were during duty, who they are now, and who they hope to be. And we've interviewed so many veterans, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a sense of where people are on this continuum and how far they are on the journey, because it's different for everybody, it seems like, which makes sense. Our guest today is the veteran of the Afghanistan and Iraqi War, Vincenzo, and his story is incredibly powerful. The unique aspect of it is that Vincenzo had what sounds like an all-star unit. And at first you're like, sounds like he had a great time. But what happens when you're in an all-star unit and not everybody comes home? And what does that do? After our interview, I thought a lot about it, and I started listening to a song came into my head, so I went and listened to it. It's the 2001 live album, Live from Mars, from Ben Harper, and it's Roses for My Friends, because it struck me as appropriate, apropos, if you will. Does that sound pretentious? That's pretentious. I apologize. But the song is good. And the song's idea, the premise of the song is that stones from your enemies is fine, right? You get better from that. But that Ben Harper can't survive the roses from his friends. And I always liked that song. And it really struck me as heavy in the context of serving with other soldiers. You know, what do you do with that kind of guilt? I think you tell your story. So I'll let Vincenzo tell his story. I think he does a fantastic job trying to be vulnerable and explain where he is in this process and go through some incredible, incredible experiences. So without further ado, here is our interview. Hey, that rhymed. I could be the next Ben Harper.
Okay. The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
We're saying we've never had to cut because of like somebody like, oh, actually, you just breached confidentiality stuff. Like,
Yeah, nobody was talking about Area 51, and he was like, actually,
We're
I
trying.
should be letting you know that aliens literally exist. But yeah, dude, thank you, first and foremost, dude. Thank you for being here. We hella appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely.
It like means the world to us that you're able to like kind of talk to us and tell us a little bit about your story and your military experience.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me. Never thought I'd do this, but I guess
Here we are.
Here we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, for those who are listening, welcome to our favorite types of episodes to do.
I think so.
We like having veterans on, and we like them being able to just, shoot the shit and not feel bad about how they speak. It's chill casa. It's whatever you want to say here, dude. It's your time, it's your platform. So, we're going to be doing a lot of listening and probably asking a lot of questions. I've been doing a lot of interesting reading about some of the stuff that you've been involved in.
Mhm.
Do you want to just kind of say your name and like what what you did in the military?
Yeah, I'm Vincenzo. I was an 0351 with 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. Served with them from 2007 until 2011. Gulf Company. served in Iraq in 2008 and Afghanistan 2009.
Cool. Can you tell the listeners or anybody else who doesn't know exactly what an O3
Oh, yeah, of course. That is infantry assaultman. They no longer have the MOS in the Marine Corps anymore. It's been given all to the combat engineers, but we were basically the demolition and rockets experts of the infantry.
Oh, okay.
Sounds pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, it was a blast. No pun intended.
Hey, there we go. Dang, then I have some like super specific questions for you later.
Do you?
Yeah, about like, because I've been trying to do the reading, and it's every time I read a modern battle, like I don't understand a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it has to do with what the Taliban was using. So that's great.
Yeah, we'll get there. And this dude has the luxury of the perspective of both Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And they were back to back, like pretty much 2008, and then the next year you went to Afghanistan.
Yeah, 3rd Marines, we only had 3 infantry battalions out there, so our rotations were really short.
Okay.
Typically like 8 months between them.
Okay. And then were you stationed at Camp Pendleton?
No, I did my SOI there, my School of Infantry. And then I did 2nd phase of boot camp there. I was West Coast Marine, but no, I was never stationed. So 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Division is actually out of Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. And
Yeah.
we are actually no longer active. We are an inactive unit now as well. So that makes just me feel fucking old,
Right.
My MOS is no longer a thing, and neither is my unit.
But I imagine there is some level of pride to that, though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I saw, and I think you'll probably feel this way too, is I scroll through things on Instagram like the rest of us, and a lot of my algorithm is showing pictures of Marines and like getting out of boot camp. And you and I got out with the was it the National Defense Ribbon, because we joined during a time
catch up mustard stain. Yeah.
Right. And all these dudes getting out of boot camp right now they got nothing.
Yeah.
It's just a naked chest. It's like, oh damn, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What place is more beautiful, Iraq or Afghanistan, from the places you went to?
Which was more beautiful?
Yeah, like where would you? Because the mountains always look so in both the places. Like I want to go rock climbing there. And like I've read about rock climbers like getting literally kidnapped by Taliban, trying to do that. So like, where would you go if you wanted to go like hiking or go into the wilderness for a couple days?
I would go back to Afghanistan for sure.
Afghanistan, okay.
I really liked that place. It was definitely a big change. Almost felt like Dorothy, I'm not in Kansas anymore when I got off the C-130 in Afghanistan looking at the Hindu Kush. Like, oh, we're not in Iraq anymore. This is it's different.
Interesting.
Like, I knew about this, but
yeah,
it was just like getting off the plane and actually seeing it. Like, oh, shit, we are in Afghanistan now, not Iraq.
Man, dude, I really hope that I doubt this, but it would be really awesome in our lifetime. Like, how a lot of Vietnam vets are finally making their way back to Vietnam, and and it's like a cool tourist destination now. It would just be really cool if Afghanistan turned into that at one point in time in our lifetime, but something tells me that's probably not going to be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, 40 years of conflict.
40? Yeah, that might have something to do with it.
We started proxying them against the Russians, right, in the 80s?
Right.
And it hasn't stopped.
Yeah. Not really, no. Nope.
It would be cool to bring your son there, though. Yeah. And your daughter, because my uncle took his son to Vietnam.
No shit.
Yeah, like 10 years ago.
Dang.
It was like a big deal. It was cool.
Dang, dude. Okay. Well,
what made you want to join the military?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Well, I just kind of fucked off in high school a lot. I grew up with 3 other brothers. Our family owned a restaurant when I was growing up, an Italian restaurant. So most of my time was just spent there working and whatnot. Had my sports here and there, but most of the time I just did not live up to my potential in school. And I was expelled a few times and ended up, barely graduating high school just because I was going to the Marine Corps. But it was my good friend back home who asked me, he's like, hey, what do you want to do after high school? And my thought was like, keep working for my family, or I don't know, what's your suggestion? He said, well, let's go to Iraq. Let's go to the Marine Corps. Let's go kill some Hajis. I remember him saying that, like when we're like little kids, like,
yeah.
at the time, it's like, yeah, let's go do that, and yeah, that kind of got my interest. Nothing else to it other than that.
I mean, I guess another question, a follow-up question for that is, you did you join at 18?
Yeah.
So you didn't have to worry. So like I joined at 17, so I had to have like my parents sign, which meant that, combat MOSs were a little bit hard to get parents to like sign on for, but you
Well,
didn't.
my buddy that that told me to join with him was 17 at the time because he didn't turn 18 until that September.
Mhm.
But his dad was a Marine. And
Okay.
they were cool with signing off on it all for him,
Cool.
Um,
Cool.
but yeah. Yeah. Well, and then, for me too, like I didn't really know much about the Marine Corps. My uncle was a Marine. He was a mechanic back in the 80s.
Mhm.
Recently died because of Camp Lejeune's,
Oh shit.
nastiness over
Man.
there. Got
Yeah.
cancer from that. But so I didn't really know much about the Marine Corps, and he told me like, well, we could just go in the infantry. I'm like, sure. I just thought there was just 0311s, just basic infantrymen.
Right.
And so I had the full intentions while I was going through boot camp and into infantry school that's what I was going to do. And then I just remember them calling for to break up in infantry school, like, hey, if you want to be a machine gunner over here, a mortarman over here, assaultman, and I went over the assaultman side because it sounded fun, explosives, rockets. But ours was a little different. Once everybody kind of came over there, like, okay, well, everybody get up in the classroom. We got an algebra 2 test for you. So, half the people didn't pass it, but,
Damn, that's really how they do it, though. They just have you guys all like go to the corner of the room you're interested in, and then you guys
yeah.
kind of
I
figure out.
mean, I can't remember the exact time, but it was like for the first 4 weeks or so, I think, of infantry school, maybe less, was just working as a basic rifleman. And then once they got to that certain point, then it was like, all right, well, now specialty, because there is more than just riflemen. We have to have our machine gunners, we have to have our mortarmen, the assaultmen, tow gunners. I mean, even, you could throw in snipers from there because if you wanted to, if you were really excelling, you could be like, hey, I want to go over to snipers, start training with them. But yeah, that's kind of how it went down.
Crazy.
That's cool. And then was it luck of the draw for Hawaii, or was it based on how you did in your schooling?
No, I think it was just kind of luck of the draw. What was funny because I went to high school with this guy who was a year or two older than me, and he ended up becoming a Marine. He was an admin guy though, who was in never combat. And I remember he was on working at Pendleton at the time that I was in infantry school. And I remember went and going and talking to him, and he was in charge of where we went. Apparently, like that was his job.
Okay.
I don't know if he ever played a part in it, but at the same time, it was just like there was a certain group of guys from our infantry school that went to 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. There were some couple guys that went to 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. And I can't remember. There might have been, I really don't know like how they do that, to be honest.
Well, that's awesome that you got to be able to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, so for me, right, I was at Intel school, and based off of where you finished in class, you got your pick. So if you got the best grades, like if you finished first, you got first pick. And if you wouldn't believe it, the first places to go were Japan. And like California was chilling there, like all these different places, and all the Marines in my Intel school wanted to go to Japan. And so by the time I finished 7th in the class, and by the time it came to me, I was like, I'm going to California.
Yeah.
I'd like to go to Southern California. But yeah, man, that's cool. And then well, let's talk training. So how long were you in Hawaii before you ended up getting shipped off to Iraq?
Got there in April of 07. Yeah, it was April. That was actually the rainiest year for Hawaii too. It rained for 30 days straight.
Dang.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
Of course it did when you went there.
I remember there was just like swimming pools of water in front of the barracks. But yeah, I was there from April 7, and then we left. I was there for just over about a year. Just over a year.
Did you guys ever charter the boats and go out to the little standing islands out there?
Yeah, it's out in Kaneohe Bay. You're saying? On the sandbar. Yeah, so I went on a few little trips out there. When I lived off base, I was staying with this like mechanic on base. He was just a civilian, but he was good friends with some higher ups on the brass side of the PMO, which is the military police. So he would just take me, and at the time I was just some lance corporal, out there, and I would get on their sailboats and go out to the sandbar and just have a party with these guys. It was fun.
That's
Sounds like a
dope.
good memory.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so, dude, educate us. What does training look like for 0351s before deployment? What does that entail?
Lots of demolition ranges, rocket shoots. They like to say that 0351s were the biggest skaters too. We know how to sharpen our skates and kind of stay away from all the rough work. You look out the windows and you see, all the other guys just pounding pavement, and we're just up in a classroom doing notes or something.
Yeah. So skating, for those who are listening that doesn't know what that means, skating would be kind of like kind of cruising, not doing much work.
Okay.
You're just getting by.
It sounds fun. It sounds like you get to like do some math and then go blow up using your math. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, there was a lot of times that we were really in classrooms, even when I was in the fleet. The fleet is when you get out of training and then you're actually with your unit. They call it the fleet. We still did a lot of classroom. I had some pretty good seniors of ours that that gave us good instruction time, and I still keep like all my notes of it. It's like weird. I just have them all.
So I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but are you guys considered like the smarter grunts? Would that be a thing that was?
Ooh.
Well, I was gonna say it in the beginning,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would definitely have to say we're definitely probably a little more. I would have, I never put down.
Algebra 2 is hard.
I'd never put down any of my 11s or any of my, any guys, but because I know a lot of them probably could do it too. It's just like any skill. You just teach them it. You really pound it to them, and they'll get it eventually. But I kind of consider that we were the smarter of the grunts for sure.
Well, that I
a
think
lot
that's
of our calculations we were using cubed roots. I mean, how many people know how to use a cubed root?
not me.
Yep.
But I mean, because you're not. I mean, there's different qualities you need for different roles, right? Like that's not saying anything about bravery or anything. Because the guy who's got a kick in the gate is probably brave. Like no one can match him on bravery. He's going to be the one kicking in the door. Like that's intense. Or my cousin, he was a ranger, and he talked about I bested him when we were shooting shotguns. We were shooting skeet. And I was like, dude, you kind of suck at this. Weren't you in Afghanistan? And he said, I've only ever shot shotguns at doors from point blank range. Like, what do you think that I'm doing with my life? I was like, oh, okay. I'm really sorry I said anything.
I really appreciate that you were like, man, I just kind of really fucked off for school. And then the moment you get in the military and explosives were involved, you're like, yeah, algebra 2, pretty easy.
I was like, engagement at our middle school would go through the roof if we could have them blow up or shoot the things that they solve in class.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's math has always been, and science have always been kind of my thing too. I really enjoy that stuff. It just kind of starts clicking up over time. So
makes sense too, because you're
when we took my ASVAB, I think I scored in like the high 80s. I was fucked up. I had a party the night before, showed up to MEPS just not feeling my best, but I scored pretty high on that test, and they told me like you can do just about any job you want here, and I just kept telling them infantry over and over again. They're like, oh, all right, like those are the guys that score like the 32s. What is it? Like,
Yep. Yeah, dude, there's definitely an intense stereotype that Marine grunts are dumbasses, but I've had many conversations with many grunts, and they have been some of the smartest human beings I've met in my life.
Well, it's like intellect versus wisdom too, right? Like those are very different things sometimes in terms of measuring. We talk all the time with middle schoolers, right? Like you can measure someone's intelligence, but it's just flattening a human. Like that's not really understanding them completely and like what they're about and like what they're interested in.
Fair point. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Iraq. What was where were you in Iraq?
We were like outside of Fallujah or Ramadi. The main cities I remember that we were in were like Shahabi, Shubayat. They were smaller cities. When we got over there, as grunts being training for a war, we got to this place where it was basically a hearts and minds mission. It was, giving briefcases of money back to the sheiks, the villages, and having tea with them, and hanging out. teaching the Iraqi police how to do posts and ECPs, entry control points, helping fortify the place. It was not what we were hoping for. Obviously,
Right, absolutely.
you join that, you're hoping for that. But the crazy thing about that deployment is there was some weird, significant shit that went down. One thing was I don't think any of us ever pulled our trigger, and we still lost our battalion commander and one of our captains and a lance corporal as well, due to a suicide bomber that happened. They all went in to this big meeting, and they all took their gear off because that's what you do. You try to be respectful. I believe the only individual who didn't was actually our sergeant major, who still lives to this day. And yeah, we lost some higher ups.
Wow.
And that's why, to me, that was like, this deployment would seem so weird. We're handing money, to people. So some people aren't getting paid still or something, and they were unhappy,
Right.
That's just the way I looked at it, but I don't know any of it.
I mean, losing a battalion commander is
That's
a
crazy.
big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How big is the battalion? Is it 2,000?
Yeah. How much? It's like
It varies. It varies from battalion.
It
to
varies,
battalion.
but it's pretty big.
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
Where did the
I think we were probably like about 1,000 to 1,500 maybe strong.
Okay,
Sure.
Where did this suicide bomber, was this on one of our bases, or were you guys out?
No, I think this was, I wasn't around the area at this time. I just remember hearing it over the radio. We were doing our own patrols and things.
Yep.
And I can't recall exactly where, but it was outside of our military bases.
Okay. Wow.
That's crazy.
Intense, dude. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, holy shit. Okay. So, what you saying, it was a hearts and minds things. It sounds like you guys were disappointed because you guys are grunts and you're training to kill.
So you're living out the
people.
plot of Jarhead, right? Like,
Yeah, sort of, I guess.
right? Like this is
You're
the
doing nothing a lot. Yeah. Are you guys doing a lot of like dismounted patrols and things like this?
Yeah. We did some. I'd say the majority were mounted, but we did dismounted here and there for sure.
Got you. Okay.
and
then-
mounted meaning like Humvees and like
Humvees, 7 tons, MRAPs, whatever you have.
and okay, and MRAPs will come back in the story because for your battle, but those are like just really heavily armored vehicles. Is that correct?
They try to make them a little more mobile and faster and bomb resistant than the 7 tons were. But honestly, I've seen those things torn to shreds too.
Okay.
I mean, the proper bomb can take anything away.
Okay. That makes sense. The propaganda for the MRAPs is like these things can stop anything.
They're from the video game Halo.
Well, because when I was reading about it,
I mean, I've seen some horrific shit.
yeah,
sure.
I bet.
You would think those MRAPs are great, and then next thing you know, I mean, even the blast pressure, right? So
Right.
even if nothing gets through there and enough blast pressure comes around, it'll go inside and just collapse everybody's organs and whatnot. And that has happened in there's just some bombs you just can't stop.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, when I first met you, you brought up something that I had never heard before, and you and your bud looked at me like, "You never fucking heard this shit before?" And I was like, no. So, do you want to kind of tell us? And by the way, before I move on to these things, the 2 things that you were involved with, I don't know if you know this, dude, but there is not a lot of information on the internet about these things.
No.
Did you know
a
that?
lot of searching.
Yeah.
It's not, these are not well-known things, which means that I'm going to force you to write a book about it because
Yes,
there's no
please.
books, dude. You gotta, we rely on people like you for these
And
things.
we read them.
That's right.
We've already read a couple. We're reading a new one. It's really good.
One of my machine gunner seniors, I think he ended up getting his master's from Gonzaga.
Okay.
In English, or he wrote a book about their deployment in the Al Anwar province, the triad over there, because they did a pretty nasty deployment, and it was a great book. Like,
Dude,
awesome.
can you let us know what that is? And
I'll send that to you guys later.
Beautiful. I'll put that in the links to your bio for this episode. I love supporting veteran literature, so that's a big deal.
Posterity, man.
And I've had people even tell me like, "Oh, you should write a book." And I don't know, it's just always hard to like. it's the ego thing, right? It's
Right,
one I
absolutely.
always try to manage, and it's like I don't care about
Yep.
me. I don't, I don't, But then there's people who say like people need to hear your story because it's going to help them or something. And it's like, okay, I guess I can understand that or whatever. But yeah, I contemplate writing a story.
You should. I read so much ancient warfare shit, and the biggest gripe I have is that I don't have more boots on the ground. What happened here? I only have like Caesar telling me what happened. I'm like, well, this fucker's lying, but like this is all I got. Like I would kill for like one of his legionaries to tell me like what actually happened here, so I can look at the two of them and see what it is. So like I have NBC News version of your battle, but I also want to hear from like the dude who was in the car. Like this is also what happened.
Yeah.
No, for sure. It's where you get your best information from.
Yeah.
Really
100 years from now, it's going to be important when they look back on
It's
this.
important right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the dragon's egg. Is that the right way I'm saying that?
Yeah, I believe so. The dragon, the dragon.
Tell us everything, dude.
So I mean, I'll tell you what's online now, right?
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, don't tell us everything, but tell us what you're allowed to tell.
So I
Aliens.
remember, so there was the transition of the Bush administration to Obama becoming president at the time, and Obama was coming over to Iraq to do meet and greets with all the people over there. So our job for this time was to go around to the original known IDF sites, indirect fire sites that they would set up, mortar strikes or whatever from. And our job was just to kind of patrol around, check them all out. It was late at night. I remember these Iraqi police pulled up on us while we're doing our patrols, just kind of yelling a bunch of gibberish. Our translator tells us that they know of something in the desert over here that we need to dig up. So we go over there and we start digging. And it's me and two of my other Marines. And as we continue to dig, my buddy from Kentucky, I just remember with his little fucking podunk accent, I hear a tink, like metal to metal. And he looks over and he's like, I think I found something. And I said, Tim, you stop digging. You have to stop. And then at that point, we had all done up and, pop gear and everything, and kind of dug around it more to kind of see that it was like this metal canister and whatnot. And from there, I just remember we stayed there all night. We got pulled off and somebody else took over because, that's how you.
Yeah, so you're standing
on
watch
something.
over this stuff, right?
Yeah. And then we go back to the base and we get debriefed and all this, and we all get handed papers. And these papers, I'm reading through them, and it's like basically saying that for 99 years that we're not allowed to talk about this ever again. And I'm just like, wait, what? Why? Like, what is this? And they're like, it's just poop canisters. And I was like, so why are we watching it and signing things for poop canisters? Like, whatever, signed it because my gunny's like, you want to stay in the Marine Corps? You want to get out? I was like, oh, whatever. Here's my name. And from there, that whole deployment, we just constantly did patrols through this. There was always a platoon that watched the drag leg, and then people patrolling, right? This went on for many deployments after our unit left. And I can't remember the time frame exactly when, but it started surfacing online because there was other units who were sitting there over and over again, just like, what are we sitting in this deserted desert area for no reason? And that's how it ended up getting. And I think it kind of got surfaced a little more because they were afraid that ISIS was going to get a hold of it as well. And that's kind of the way they started talking a little more about it. But to me, the funniest thing about it all is that I just remember this. And I was watching a Dave Chappelle skit the other day with my wife she's never seen. And it was Negrodamus, him pretending to be Nostradamus. And this lady stands up in the back room and says, Negrodamus, why is George Bush so certain there are WMDs in Iraq? And Negrodamus says, well, miss, that's because he has the receipts.
Yeah.
The 80s, baby.
And I just thought about that for a second. I was like, oh, shit. Like, I don't know anything. Like, personally, I don't have any top secret clearance, but it's just like snap, snap, snap. Like, who knows,
Yeah.
And it's just weird because still to this day, there's many people who actually believe that we never found what George Bush said that we were going to find over there. But I mean, if you just look up Dragon's Egg, there's a simple article that actually explains that. And that's all I said was that article, like, so, I mean, you could read it for yourself.
Yeah, so I'll put the article in our bio, but honestly, the only news affiliate, the major news affiliate that did a piece on it was Fox News.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because this is the first I've ever heard of it.
Same.
Because was it Colin Powell? Who was the one that first said that's like on the hook for saying WMDs and then not finding it?
I don't know. Colin Powell was loyal to George Bush, but Colin Powell was not. He always said it would be easier to sell Afghanistan rather than selling the idea of invading Iraq.
Right.
So
it's crazy. That's crazy.
That is nuts, dude. That's crazy that you were a part of that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, it was an interesting deployment for sure. Just it wasn't what we were expecting.
Yeah, I bet, dude. I bet. All right. Well, let's merge. Does anybody need to refill their drink before we move on?
I already did.
Oh, okay.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Let me pull up my notes here because it's time to. We're gonna pivot to Afghanistan. Good old Afghanistan.
I would like Spencer and I both to try to pronounce this tiny town's name.
Yeah.
And see who's the best at pronouncing it.
This is so hard for me. Like,
all right, Spencer, you go first because you're going to be the worst at it.
Dahane.
I'm going to say Dahani, just to be different.
Okay.
From what I know of and remember, we called it Dahana.
Dahana.
Okay.
All right. Hey, we weren't that far off. Don't worry. We practiced this before we hit record on this too.
Dahana.
Dahana.
Beautiful. When did you arrive into Afghanistan?
It was actually a few days after my first son was born. I was so as we leave to go overseas, you kind of go all in different, companies and whatnot. So my company was slated to leave the day of my son's birth. Like I was getting him induced because I needed to see him. Even our first sergeant kind of told us like, hey, this is going to be one of those deployments. Like we all knew that this was going to be what we've been waiting for.
Yes.
And he was a super awesome leader. And he actually made sure that I stayed back just a few days to go with my buddy's company, weapons company, just so I can see the birth. So that was May 9th of 2009.
May 9th.
What a guy.
Yeah, that's dope. Shout out to that first sergeant. You want to say
hell yeah.
Coleman Kinzer. He's awesome.
Shout out to that first sergeant. I had hella shitty first sergeant, so that's dope. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to, with your permission, I wrote down some notes as to what Obama was doing with Afghanistan at the time to kind of give listeners some context, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in it, and I don't, I try not to look too deep into it like some of my guys do, but I love the people that do because it's needed.
Okay. So for listeners, just to give you some context as to what was going on in the world when Vince was on his way to Afghanistan. So on February 17th of 2009, newly elected U.S. President Barack Obama announces plans to send 17,000 more troops to the war zone. Obama reaffirms campaign statements that Afghanistan is the most important United States front against terrorist forces. He says that the United States will stick to a timetable to draw down most combat forces from Iraq by the end of 2011. And as of January 2009, the Pentagon has 37,000 troops in Afghanistan, roughly divided between the United States and NATO commands. Reinforcements focus on countering a resurgent Taliban and stemming from the flow of foreign fighters over the Afghan-Pakistan border in the south. Speaking on the troop increase, Secretary of Defense Robert Gates describes the original mission in Afghanistan as too broad and calls for establishing limited goals such as preventing and limiting terrorist safe havens. In May 11th, there was a changeover. That's when you went there, and then it went from David McKiernan to McChrystal, General Stanley McChrystal, if you remember that. And then basically, when you were there, Obama decides that we're gonna try to send like thousands and thousands of more troops and Marines to Afghanistan to try to officially do a counterinsurgency. I'm sure, as you well know, right?
Mhm.
And that's pretty much what was going on in the area. Like, you were in Helmand province, correct?
Yeah, we were in Helmand province, in Now-Zad,
Now-Zad.
until we pushed to Dahana.
Okay. Yeah,
And
we're
towards
gonna
the back half of deployment.
we're gonna get there. So, I mean, one of the biggest things, listeners, that Vince was a part of was we had in our minds that there was a lot of opium flowing in Helmand province, and we were trying to stop the opium flow because that's where the Taliban was getting their money. Would you say that that's accurate?
Oh, absolutely. And the harvest time is when you always saw more blood.
Okay.
Spring, I believe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
60% of the world's opium trade was going through this.
I think it's more.
I think it's a lot more than that. If I remember the
Whoa.
number.
Yeah.
No, through the one.
Oh,
Through
that's correct. But
Dahane.
through Dahane, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
there was a shit ton of opium going through there. So
I might have made these numbers up just because I liked them, but it was something like 90% of the world's opium comes from Afghanistan, 95 of that's from Helmand.
that is correct.
That's correct.
That
But
is correct.
for listeners, Dahane, some of these towns that you guys are referencing, I've been looking them up. They're like 2,000 people in the whole town.
Mhm.
So it's not. When I was reading it, I was like, all right, 2,000 people, whatever. And it's like 60% of the world's opium goes through the 2,000 people. Like, what the fuck are you talking about here? Like, this is wild.
Yeah,
to
the
me.
logistics of that is absurd.
Exactly,
Yeah,
like-
absolutely.
There,
So-
there was, I should have took some notes now that it's popping in my head, but there was a movie. It was kind of like a spoof, kind of funny, but kind of serious movie. I can't remember if it was Brad Pitt or
Oh
something.
yeah, War Machine.
Was it called War Machine?
War Machine.
And it talked about Afghanistan and all this stuff that we're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. When I watched that movie, I was like, oh my God.
Dude, that's the first movie that was made about the time that I was in Afghanistan. I was there for that entire movie. It's fucking that movie's like a huge deal for me. But
Yeah.
Dahana, I have a little blurb here about the town before you want to get into the battle of it if you want. Do you have anything?
I have a million
no.
questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'll wait till we
Do
get
you
the
want me to-
blurb. Yeah, you do the blurb first.
So yeah, here's a little bit. So listeners, here's where Vince was. This is Dahana. It's a town of, like Kevin was saying, 2,000 people located in Helmand province, and serves as a major trading route through northern Helmand, which is used by the Taliban to transport 60% of the world's opium. So that's crazy. Prior to the battle, coalition forces had not entered Dahana for years due to a lack of available troops to deploy. The Taliban became de facto rulers of the town, maintaining checkpoints and levying taxes. However, when the Islamist organization threatened to ruin the August 20th Afghan elections, coalition commanders feared reprisals against the town's residents. They hoped to establish a voting center in Dahana before the election began. Huge deal.
That's crazy.
Huge
Yeah.
deal.
So it's been like 4 or 5 years under Taliban rule.
Yeah.
And there's about to be an election.
Yeah.
Taliban's been levying, like, they're essentially taxing in and out of the city, right?
Yep.
And then now they're like gonna fuck them up a little bit more. Crazy. Okay, so I have a first question. So like that's like the story, and we know it's about the opium trade, we know it's about the election. You guys, boots on the ground, were you guys told like this mission about like the hearts and minds, like you know you're gonna liberate a city? And or did you guys like even care about that? Like, I'm just wondering, like, what was reading through the reports, I could get like action reports I could find from like NBC and a couple other, because there were some embedded reporters that
Yeah,
were
we had them over there. We
helicopters.
definitely had a few of them. It was pretty. That's how I knew this thing was different, because when we got those guys with us, I was like, "This is a different deployment."
Yeah, and like some of them went on the helicopters and they went behind, and like that's intense. Like props to those fucking reporters for like trying to get the story, man.
Yeah.
But they just gave action reports, or that's at least all that was published. So I didn't know like what you guys thought going in. Like, are you guys here to liberate and you believe in this, or is this a mission and you're going to complete the mission?
It's a good question.
I think it was kind of probably split. I think it was a little torn.
Okay.
I think there's always some people who like probably just want to go in there and just fucking wreck shop.
Sure, absolutely. Do your job well.
And then there's probably those people who like think of it a little more methodically, like, you know what? Yeah, I want to go do that, but I'm doing this for the cause, right? I'm doing that to, like, allow these people to have their home again and get rid of the evil, right? There's probably a lot of different, mindsets going into it. And that's probably why it was hard for, they didn't really probably ask everybody. They're probably getting too many different mixed reviews or something. Or yeah. I mean, personally for me at the time, I was, I guess I would kind of like, I guess I kind of thought of the liberation for sure. I mean, being there. So here's kind of going back a little bit. Here's the difference, right? We get to Iraq and we have all these ROEs and EOFs, right? Rules of engagement, escalation of force. And basically, it's like you couldn't pull a trigger until somebody can walk around with a rifle and you can't shoot them. Not until that rifle is being pointed and shot at you, then you could shoot back. That was Iraq for me. So when I got to Afghanistan, it was you see someone here in Now-Zad, right? This was before we got to Dahana. But if you see anybody out here, even if they don't have a gun, shoot them.
Okay.
Like this is like, it was a free fire area. So it kind of, I feel maybe a lot of us Marines at that time, the ones who haven't tasted combat were kind of just like, we were happy with that.
Yeah.
At the time, and probably not really thinking so much of the liberation aspect of it, just like trying to rid the evil of the earth.
Right.
So for me, now that I look back on it, I definitely look at it was liberating to give back to the people. No culture should ever tell the opposite sex that you can't read and write and be as good as the man. Like, I don't know, was just kind of always silly to me. And I look back at it and I actually was happy that I did something for that.
Yes.
But in the moment, I don't think that it ran through my head as much.
Yeah.
How old are you at the time?
I think I just turned 21.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you have a son, or is your firstborn a son? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, all my boys. I've got 3 boys now, but yeah, they're all boys.
Dude, now that I'm a dad, I can't even imagine being deployed with kids. Yikes.
The crazy thing about it too, going back to my first sergeant, who's badass. Before he left the main bases, I forget the names of them that we were at in Afghanistan. I don't know if it was him. Don't want to throw him under the bus, but he tactically acquired a satellite dish for us. So when we were out there in the middle of fucking nowhere, we actually had some internet. So I actually was able to, I forget what it was back then, but like basically a video call back home. So I got to see my son every once in a while.
Skype?
Was it Skype?
Skype. Yeah, I think it was Skype.
Yeah.
Remember that shit? Yeah.
I think it was Skype, but except when it, like we got to do it every once in a while, which was nice. Sometimes football games or something were on late at night or something, like we had little amenities because he just knew how important this was and how exhausting it was going to be to lose men and continue to have to fight. So he tried to make sure that the morale was high. The guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah, dude, that makes genuinely from like the bottom of my soul, that makes me happy to hear that you had a good first sergeant, because I had a slew of really shitty first sergeants. All right, can we talk day one?
Let's talk day one.
This was a three-day battle, correct? 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, believe so.
Okay. And let's talk day one. So August 12th of 2009, we got 400 Marines and 100 Afghan National Army fighters leaving Now-Zad with their Humvees and MRAPs and headed toward Dahana.
Uh-huh.
Do you want me to read to you what Wikipedia says, and you can either confirm or deny any of this, or what?
Say those numbers again or whatever. You're saying how like.
Yeah, I was saying 400 Marines and 100 Afghan National Army fighters. Talk to me.
I don't think there's 400 Marines. So
Interesting.
Gulf companies, we had probably 30 to 40 per platoon. 4 platoons. So like 100, let's just say 120, right? Then we had a weapons company attachment, one of their platoons. So we maybe had Marine size with EOD and snipers and this and that. Marines that we had maybe were 400 over there.
Right. not going to Dahana, but just over there. Okay, that's funny that you say that, dude. Because in my mind, I was like, 500's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
Like that, yeah.
Because my question was, how many Humvees and MRAPs did you guys fucking
Great question.
deploy? Because that's crazy to me, thinking about transporting 500 guys to a
Oh,
battle.
it wasn't fun transporting stuff out to us. If you ever talked to the people that had to transport shit to us, they hated it.
This guy.
It
Yeah.
was
Part of it.
to ride out to us was just
Shit
it was
show.
a death trap. You
Yep.
were losing vehicles along the way. It was an all-day event to go 10 miles because it was just
Yeah. So
That's
I
crazy.
was attached to First Marine Logistics Group for a while, so we would go out there every once in a while, and it was I have a lot of stories about that I'll talk to you about at a different time. But yeah, shitty, super shitty.
Before the MRAPs and them got there, before you guys all got there was like 3 helicopters with a platoon and some reporters that went behind enemy lines to like blow some stuff up and like take a command post.
Mhm.
My question is, for those, like for that platoon, like did you guys like volunteer for it, or are you guys like voluntold for it? Like, hey, it's your turn to do this, or is like everyone itching and it's like, who has the most like leverage to get on that company for that?
I think it's typically you're voluntold to the extent of it's also rotation based.
Okay.
And kind of then there's that thing that trumps it, in my opinion, is who's the most reliable.
Yeah,
Got it.
as probably it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
Because
a
if
big
all of a
deal.
sudden you're getting the B team on the next rotation and you have this like S tier mission you got to take care of,
Yeah.
you're going to be like, you know what? I'm going to take my chances with the S team that just got off patrols and little sleep,
So and you guys were all cool with that? Like everybody kind of like all you soldiers like understood that, like even though
We weren't
just
soldiers.
got
I'll
off.
say it again.
Sorry. So it'd be like, even though you guys were you guys all okay with that? Like, even though I just got off and I just did a mission, I know that I'm the reliable one, so like I got to go back out and do it again. Or was there like resentment that could build from that kind of thing?
Um,
And I know that's hard, because I'm asking you to like put your like the
Well, at the time, I don't think that a lot of us really thought about what I just said with a reliable one.
Right.
I think a lot of the times, we all just, I think every platoon and every squad always had like a top, I think everybody was pretty good. Like you could really rely on all of our guys. We had a great group of guys. Didn't matter who woke up the next day that needed it,
High praise. High
absolutely.
praise.
We were, I don't know. I love my company. I thought we were some badass dudes.
Dude, that's awesome.
So I don't think there was a lot of resentment with anything. We just, yeah, sure. Sometimes we were fucking tired. Sure. We were tired of fucking losing people. And not being able to really stick it to them sometimes. It was frustrating, but at the end of the day, we got our mission done,
Well, man, that is a sense of relief to hear from me, because I did not have a lot of positive experiences with the units that I was in. I have a lot of negative stories. So that makes me happy to hear you say that.
Well, it's like a lot of those guys, even that I talked to quite a few of them. And even during the time I used to talk to quite a few more. We used to always talk about, if we could all stay together, we would reenlist.
Mm.
We could keep this going, we would reenlist. But at the same time, now that I'm older, looking back on it, it was like, man, that would have probably been really draining, because every deployment that we would have went on, we would have slowly
You guys.
lost more and more. And then to what extent,
Yeah.
But in the moment, that it feels like these, I could just do this forever with these guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys were prepped on this mission, and then what kind of happened for you the first day?
So for me, as an 0351, there was only 6 of us. There was only 6 0351s in that whole entire area. So we were all broken up between 3 platoons. There was 2 with 1st platoon, 2 with 2nd platoon, and 2 with 3rd platoon. I was attached to 1st. 1st platoon's mission for Operation Eastern Resolve 2, because Operation Eastern Resolve did not work.
Yes.
And they didn't find a better name. They just wanted to put a 2 on it.
I know, it's a wacky name.
But our mission was to fortify and ensure that we don't get countered.
Okay.
As we're offensing Dahana, making sure that everything we've gained in Now-Zad isn't getting countered.
Got it.
Okay.
So as we pushed outside of our FOB, our forward operating base of FOB Cafaretta is what it was called. we made some OPs, and usually those OPs, observation posts, we would name after fallen. We were at OP Whittle, which was one of our Marines who had lost his life, and it was the only 2-story building out there, and it was pretty far away from our fob. So we had a Mark 19, 40 millimeter grenade launcher mounted on top of the roof, and then we had other machine guns around the house, and then we had a whole perimeter out there. And my job with my leader Doan was to ensure the whole area was riddled with improvised claymore mines that we made ourselves.
Oh shit!
Whoa.
And
You guys are just waiting. You guys are just waiting, bro.
Oh,
Post it up. Let's go.
it was awesome. You know,
Crazy.
you make these claymores, and you run all the wire back and kind of hide it under the dirt, you know, and you run it back to everybody's post, and you give everybody a 9-volt battery, and you say, you hear something, see something, touch the 2 wires.
Damn. Wow.
So that was my during this whole thing, right? Obviously, while that mission's going on, we're obviously all at the fucking radio, right? Listening, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, staying on high alert on our end, but also listening to the radio. So unfortunately, I was trying to get one of my buddies who was on that push to be here to talk about, you know, more of that, but it was definitely a shit show. I remember when they first got in there, from hearing, you know, over the radio, and then, you know, hearing everybody's experience afterwards. As they were pushing in, they were getting shot at from the mountains, and they were getting shot at.
Yes.
They were getting shot at not from like a small arm or a sniper rifle or a rocket. They were getting shot at from anti-aircraft guns. It's like 100, I forget the millimeter, like 107 millimeter, you know, recoilless rifle up there, just sending them. One of my buddies, I remember, I think he was the guy that I was going to bring on tonight, was said he was standing by those big mud walls, and he just hears a smack right on the wall and just sees this hole through it, you know, like,
Fuck.
you know, they were getting, I mean, they're pretty inaccurate from up there with those things, but I mean, it's
Still.
still scary nonetheless, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see a hole go through a wall like that, like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
that was one of my questions. Looking through the action reports, you know, there's a lot of like the Taliban was doing a lot of small arms fighting and a lot of like it seems like rocket propelled grenade kind of situations.
But
And you say that they were firing heavy rockets, and that was like a bigger deal. That they were firing heavy rockets, they're firing like missiles from a mobile missile carrier, and I just had no idea like the difference. Like, why is that a bigger deal? Like, if they said heavy rocket, like, does that mean anything to you? Is that like?
I think it's just color.
Okay.
okay.
Okay, that's fine.
You know, as a writer, you know.
For sure.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure,
Because
for
it already sounds bad with rocket propelled grenades. Like, I'm already not a fan.
Well, a rocket propelled grenade is an RPG, right? I
Right,
mean, for
absolutely.
anybody who's ever played a video game, you don't even have to be there. RPGs are prevalent through a lot of video
Yeah.
games.
Yes.
I think when they're talking about heavy rockets, I think they're talking about those Chinese rockets that they had. Because I remember they used to shoot that at us all the time too. And they were like 100 something millimeter. Like my rocket launcher was a 84 millimeter.
Okay.
Their 83.5 was the rockets. But yeah, and like, you know, we had a law that was 63 millimeter. I don't know the threshold, but I think there's a threshold that becomes a heavy rocket when it's over 100 millimeters.
Okay.
It was saying, according to the literature online, they were overshooting. They were missing a lot.
They absolutely were. And that's one thing that's like, I don't know, luck is on our side that they were just not that great. They were stormtroopers or something. You know, they were definitely not, were not great at shooting, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's kind of at the same time, it almost makes you like, I don't know, kind of going off subject here a little bit, but goes back to like, you know, as I watch old wars and stuff, like a lot of those people actually fought some really trained individuals, you know, where I feel like sometimes we just fought some guys that were just like trying to.
And some radicalized people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know, which was kind of nice because, you know, at that point, if we were fighting some real good war fighters, we probably lost a lot more or something.
Absolutely.
right.
That's kind of, so that was another one of my questions. Because they talk about like having snipers, and they even talk about like on the NBC action report too, and a couple other ones I was reading about them trying to do like encircling techniques and encircling maneuvers. And my question is like, were some of the Taliban maneuvers, like, were they pretty good? Like, were there some units inside this Taliban forces that you guys were coming up against in 2009? Like, decent? Like, I can't imagine them doing an encircling move and not knowing that that's like a good technique to use and like try to get a flank and try to like, catch them from behind.
From what I recall, I don't recall any of that.
Okay.
I don't recall a single individual doing that. I would have to maybe talk to some of my buddies, but no. A lot of their stuff is just more like a defensive type of stick. I'm going to stick my rifle through a hole and I can't even see out it. And I'm just going to pull the trigger.
Okay.
Spray and pray.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, I mean, as a civilian, the image I get is so inconsistent because of like the media that I consume, either like through literature or through like Hollywood. It's never clear to me because it seems like it's always trying to serve the function of the story of like, are the Taliban like exceptional fighters or are they just like radicalized kids? And I can never figure out. And also because they are not uniform, because they are a terrorist group, right? Because different people are radicalized at different spots and they're trained differently. I bet that's also part of it, right? Like I bet in some cities they are more trained than other ones. So
yeah, one of the biggest things that we had to read in the intelligence field was the bear went over the mountain, and they were saying that the people that we were going to be fighting in Afghanistan were trained by like these were the sons of guys who were fighting against the Russians.
Mhm.
And the way that the Mujahideen got tactics was they watched how the Russians would fight.
okay.
And so there was a lot of like L-shaped ambush was the big one. Like, oh, the Taliban's going to be doing the L-shaped ambush because that's what the Russians did.
Old school flank maneuver.
For sure. But I definitely agree with Vince that it's like this was not an organized fighting force. Okay. And they were fucked up and high half the time. So
yeah. I'd have to probably respect some of the guys, I mean, the guys wore freaking like sandals and a freaking dress and ran over the Hindu Kush mountains like goats leaping over rocks and shit. I mean, there was definitely aspects of them that they could have probably been a great formidable fighting force, I'm sure,
Right. Yeah, you're not speaking to if they were brave or not. You're just speaking to how well trained they were beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
How was
brave, and they were physically a lot of more physically fit. They knew their mountains well.
For sure.
Yeah.
How was working with the Afghan National Army for you guys?
Man, so this is kind of skipping. We didn't really quite finish the battle. But once it was all said and done, we took over Dahana. And
we can back up and go day by day if you want.
Well, I honestly I can't recall every single day. Every single day was me waiting to blow some shit up.
Okay.
Well, let's go over one question then about the days, because how hard was it for you? Because I mean, you're like the prime example of what I'm trying to imagine myself in, which is modern warfare, right? Like after World War I, with the new artillery, warfare is forever different. And warfare, to me, and I might be totally wrong on this, but it seems like it's a lot of waiting and then incredibly violent and then a lot of waiting. Yeah. And staying vigilant seems really hard to do. And then it got to like 120 degrees a couple of days because it's August in Afghanistan. So
it wasn't too bad compared to Iraq. So
damn, really?
Really?
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, it got hot there, but sorry to cut you off. But honestly, the heat there didn't bug me really. I don't think it bugged many guys compared to what we dealt with in Iraq.
But for the like keeping the mental fortitude, is that difficult? Like, is that like how do you prep yourself to stay? Because you are on a base, you might get invaded at any moment.
Oh, for sure.
And so, like, how are you staying vigilant while nothing's happening? Like, how do you stay sharp? Is my question, because I feel like I would eventually start looking at the wood around me and be like, oh, that's interesting. There's a knot there. Like, this is old growth. Like, I'm just so bored. Like, I can't help myself.
Through training and everything, on certain bases, they'll even have these spray painted 2 words on a lot of posts as you walk. What was that?
Complacency kills.
Yeah. Complacency kills.
Sure.
You'll see that in training. They'll have it just spray painted around as you're doing training and shit. And it kind of instills that in you a little bit to understand that, yeah, complacency kills. But you're right. There's still those times where you're on post for 8 to 12 hours or something. And you're just like staring at, that knot of wood or whatever, that, bunny that's hopping in the distance or whatever. Like, yeah, it gets tough for sure. For the guys inside the base that are not on post, right? You're feeling safe because the guys are on post.
Okay.
That's what you're feeling safe for. So there was times where, when we got off patrols or whatever, we would actually have some good times, as the base was being watched and we weren't doing crazy missions, play some poker or work out or play volleyball. We would go Marines against the Navy in volleyball. Yeah, I mean, we, like I said, and I'll say it again, my first sergeant knew how to run a warfighting unit, and to keep the morale high and keep the things. We had good meals too. We got airdropped, food all the time.
It's a big deal.
We got lobster tails and steaks and
Yep.
that would get airdropped. Sometimes it'd fall in enemy lines, but sometimes we'd get what we want. I even cooked for some of my Marines before because it was like one of my old trades that I used to do before then. And
Yeah.
Right.
weirdly enough, some sausages and onions and peppers fell. And I was like,
It's
guess we're making
perfect.
sausage and peppers.
Yeah. Well, that's super impressive. I'm like really impressed whenever I hear that people can handle that. Like, I just don't know if I had that. Like, that's the part of modern warfare that's so complicated for me. Of you guys just being standing watch for that amount of time, like being ready.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough, I mean, there's people who fall asleep on post,
I bet.
It happens, and that's why you have like the fail safes that are put in place, right? That's why you have a sergeant of the guard. That's why you have a corporal of the guard. That's why you have your posts. That's why you do your radio checks. That's why you keep a notebook. That's why you have your defilet of fire. Each post knows their left and right lateral limit. I mean, our war fighting, we know what we're doing, break it down to the dumbest person, down Barney style, like they say, and we'll make it. We'll make it happen.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys take Dahana, and then on the fourth day, you guys got it, right? And so now you guys just pack up, go back to Now-Zad?
Nope. No. Now we keep a constant, post in Now-Zad or in Dahana now. And now we have the Iraqi police or Afghan police and the Afghan army with us. So we're in this like main town center, and there's like a main house. So it's like a big compound with a big wall around it, but it's sectioned up 3 different ways. And one section is like a house with the police in it. One section has the army guys in it, and then one section is the middle, and that's us, the Marines. So we're kind of all working together now, training together and whatnot. But we always had problems. There was always problems. Because for a lot of us too, we're just like, who can we actually trust?
Yeah.
How do we not know that some of these guys are just fucking rats, giving information back to them? Which honestly, I don't put it. There was one day we had a good old Mexican standoff with them. It was one of the craziest freaking things. One of the freaking most heart draining things ever. Yeah. I forget what happened, but I think one of our Marines might have stole one of their flags or something. Some petty shit happened. And then they were going at it. And next thing you know, like, they're all on their side yelling and screaming, and we're over here yelling and screaming, and guns are drawn, right? Like, we're on radios yelling up, hey, make sure you got that machine gun pointed on his head, like everything, like fucking everybody's like ready to just pull the trigger on these guys that we're supposed to be working with and training,
Sure. Holy
Obviously,
shit.
nothing ever happened that day, but there was tension sometimes, with guys you're supposed to work with and train. Yeah.
This is actually a really good segue, dude. I don't know if you've heard this, but on the internet, they were alluding to the idea that you guys apparently thought that the Taliban got tipped off that you guys were coming.
Oh yeah, that was a big part of these articles.
Yeah,
The
I believe so.
retrospectives.
Yeah, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
Like,
and
was
that's
it
why
thing?
there was always that. And even to this day, I feel like I have a pretty good, I can read a person and tell whether they have good intentions or bad intentions.
For sure.
There are definitely a few guys over there you can just tell just had bad intentions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those motherfuckers I did not trust.
Yeah.
There was one Afghan army guy that I love to this day, and I hope he's still alive, and I wish I could bring him back here and house him. His name was Shawali, but we just called him Charlie. And he loved it. He was the only guy we would let inside of our area.
Wow.
There were some Marines who were kind of pissed off about it still, but we're like, no, this motherfucker is legit. Like, this guy loves
He's
us,
a guy.
cares for us, But
For sure.
yeah, but there's guys you could just tell have bad intentions, and that they're going back and giving them all the information they can.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get paid for it. We're not going to pay them for doing it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Or
motivators.
they get to stay alive. Man,
Yeah.
fucking crazy, dude. Wow. All right. Well, and then so that was you only got to do 2 deployments.
Yeah, only got to do 2. I mean, I got blown up once in Afghanistan while I was over there, and then dealt with a lot of mental problems afterwards, and um, ended up just not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
Realizing that, and then I had my second child, and just like this isn't
You
their their biological host. Those 2 children was never a really great person, and I knew as a child, as even as a young kid, that these children needed something, and I just knew that I couldn't do another deployment,
Yep.
So I had to just hang them up and just realize that was it.
yeah,
Time to move
absolutely.
on.
Good for you.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I can't even I don't have the perspective of being well actually, I mean, I was a dad for a little bit while I was still in, but it was towards the end of my contract. But I can't even imagine being deployed while having kids. I just can't. I don't even want to think about that, to be honest.
Rough.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. We asked the same question to Ron while he was on, but like, what kind of things helped you out, man, as a veteran dealing with your the experiences that you had overseas, coming back? What what helped keep you centered?
Well, it took a while.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Obviously, it didn't happen overnight. But I think eventually, what a lot of it stemmed from was looking at those guys that I lost,
Mhm.
especially the ones that I was really close with and had a true bond with, and knowing that they would want to see me thrive.
Right.
They would want to see me be successful. That if I put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger, that they would fucking punch that thing away before the bullet came from the chamber. That's what they're doing right now, that they're looking over me. So I think that when I came to that realization, I realized I will never, you know, ever commit suicide
Yeah.
Right.
because it is dishonoring them who didn't even think about committing suicide. They got killed in action, for what we were fighting for. So I think it was just like an aha moment one day, just many years into it, that kind of snapped me out of a lot of the dark days. But then after that, it was just like, just keep pushing forward, and it's just always in the back of my mind. Those guys are just there, and I just feel them always watching me.
Yeah.
And I feel like when people can start to do that, because I dealt with survivor's guilt,
Sure.
and still kind of think about it every once in a while. But I mean, it is what it is, right? You're here and they're not, and now you live in their honor, and you live and do the best that you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, dude, that's powerful, and that
Absolutely.
that honestly is that's helped me just now hearing you say that as a veteran, and obviously my experiences were, I have my own perspective and experiences over there, but like hearing you say that has been powerful for me to hear that. So I can only imagine what other veterans are going to feel when they hear you say that.
Oh.
You know, yeah, there's like 60 plus veterans a day that are taking their lives, and so I want to be rather than sitting here and sitting in my house and just thinking about it and doing nothing. We hope here at Battle Buddies to just kind of educate people and give veterans a platform.
Yep.
We don't know exactly what it looks like, but sitting here and talking to you is, our so-called front lines of, that epidemic that's happening in our country right now that the government doesn't seem to want to do anything about. So I'm glad you're alive, bro. I'm so glad you're here, bro.
Thank you.
Truly, from the bottom of my soul, like we appreciate you for being here and telling your story. Do you have any other questions,
No,
dude?
just thank you. Like,
Yeah, dude. It means a lot to us that you're here. That was like that was over an hour. We just did an hour super quick like that. No big deal.
Cool.
You are welcome back anytime, sir.
absolutely.
Um, I would actually like to cover the Battle of Dahana at some point, more in depth. We'll go day by day, and we'll do the whole damn thing, and it'll be nice to have
Yeah,
you.
it'd be cool to get couple of our Marines who actually were boots on ground during that push.
We would love that.
That'd be great.
We would love
because it's
that.
not covered enough. Like I said, I
It's
could find
not.
a couple. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not as well covered because embedded reporters went in those helicopters. Like,
My mom watched it on TV as all like she was
No
always
shit.
watching.
Yeah, I'm sure she was like, I'm sure there was days where she didn't want to answer the door or the phone. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
worried as can be. But yeah, man, I mean, with your permission, of course, I'll put like your email in the bio, and if any Marines hear this that were involved with, were in Now-Zad at the same time as you, I'm sure they would love to reach out to you and like
Yeah,
say
absolutely.
what's up. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
this is great. I mean, I like what you're doing. I think it's going to be a good way to kind of connect a lot of different veterans, hopefully,
Fuck yeah.
Like you said, the battle buddy thing, try to help everybody out because we're all dealing with our demons.
Yes, sir.
It always
Yes.
seems easier just to shut the lights off and never turn them on again, but that's the easy way. And
That's
easy
right.
way.
That's right.
why would we choose the Marine Corps or any other military branch if we wanted the easy way in the first place?
That's right. Well, dude, thank you for showing your vulnerability today. That shows bravery and that shows honor. And we can't express how grateful we are that you came and kind of gave us a little slice of your perspective in life today, man. We have a tradition here at Battle Buddies where we sign off by saying bonsai at the same time. Basically, all we do is I say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to Battle Buddies. And until next time, bonsai.
Bonsai.
All right. Bonsai.
Bonsai.